Coming up on Network Africa. At least 36 people killed by suspected rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Zimbabwean government and civil servants agree on a pay rise deal. Plus, good news in Côte d'Ivoire as a suspected case of coronavirus tests negative. Hello and welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where officials in the east of the country say at least 36 people have been killed by suspected rebels. This is the latest in a series of attacks believed to have been carried out by the rebel Allied Democratic Forces. In a controversial move last year, the Congolese army, initially working without troops from the UN peacekeeping force, launched an operation against the ADF. Since then, activists in Beni region say 265 civilians have been killed in numerous attacks that appear aimed at turning the population against the military. Away from security issues, talks to resolve a long-running dispute between Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan on the fate of Africa's largest hydropower project are continuing in the United States, a day after they were initially supposed to end. According to reports, the negotiators are still deadlocked over the finer details on how the $4 billion dam will operate. Technical details on the duration of the filling stages, the amount of water to be released downstream by Ethiopia, and the quantity of water that will be retained in the reservoir being built are some of the biggest sticking points. In addition, Egypt has demanded assurances over drought management once the dam becomes operational later this year. The final deal was supposed to have been signed by January 29, following an earlier draft agreement that had been brokered by the U.S. Treasury Department and the World Bank. It's not clear yet how long the talks will continue for. Now, after months of strikes that have severely affected public services, the Zimbabwean government and civil servants have agreed on a pay rise deal. According to the state newspaper, The Herald, the lowest paid worker will now be paid 2,500 Zimbabwean dollars per month, up from 1,033 Zimbabwean dollars, while the highest paid will get 4,631 Zimbabwean dollars. The Public Workers Union Apex Council says the increment is a mere 31% of what they had asked for and will continue pushing for more. Earlier this month, the Apex Council rejected a government offer to double pay for employees on grounds that it was too late. It was too little. Now, there will also be a cost of living adjustment based on the total package to be paid starting February and backdated to January. Soaring inflation has eroded salaries in the country, which is grappling with its worst economic crisis in a decade. The country has had frequent shortages of foreign currency, food, fuel, electricity, and medicine. Now let's get more on this story from Zimbabwean journalist George Mushumba. He joins us now live from Harare. Thank you for speaking to us. Now, this has been long coming for the Zimbabwean civil servants. How are they responding to this piece of good news? It seems we're having audio problems in speaking to George. But let's move on to health issues now. It's good news in Côte d'Ivoire as a suspected case of coronavirus has tested negative. A student who had traveled from Beijing to Abidjan over the weekend had shown flu-like symptoms, sparking fears the disease had spread to West Africa. In a statement, the Ivorian Health Ministry said that tests by research institutes in Ivory Coast and France had come back negative for the virus. The 34-year-old student was kept in quarantine whilst tests were carried out. According to the ministry, she's been treated for her symptoms and is recovering well. Now, if the results had been positive, This would have been the first confirmed case in Africa. Another 4 suspected cases have been isolated in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, including 3 students traveling from the epicenter of the outbreak in Wuhan in China. Now, officials from the health ministry say initial tests were negative. Meanwhile, in Kenya, they've also isolated another student from Wuhan who arrived in Nairobi on Tuesday. While back here in Nigeria, the government is also doing its part in curbing the spread of the coronavirus. The Lagos state government has reached an agreement with the Chinese embassy to ensure that Chinese citizens remain in their country for now to avert the spread of coronavirus in the state. Also, the Federal Ministry of Health has issued a travel advisory to Nigerians following several cases in many parts of the world. The Minister of Health, Mr. Osage Ohanire, warns people planning to travel from Nigeria to China or any of the affected countries to hold on until further notice. He also asked those arriving from such countries with no visible symptoms to self-isolate for 2 weeks, while airlines have a duty to report any incidents of passengers falling sick during the flights.
As the first Federal Executive Council meeting for 2020 holds, the ministers, after hours of deliberation, briefed State House correspondents on their presentations to Council, beginning with the Minister of Transport on measures to eliminate racketeering in train stations.
900 million naira for the automated fare collection system is purely a software solution. And then what people refer to as e-ticketing.
President Muhammadu Buhari from
Nigeria's Attorney General says the country is expecting the repatriation of looted funds.
$321 million expected to be repatriated is attached to Abacha and is named Abacha Loot.
Special projects unit of the
Mr. Fashola gives a rundown of projects executed by the Ministry of Works and Housing.
The mandate was that FEMA should deliver in excess of 2,000 kilometers of maintenance, aggregated maintenance of roadwork nationwide. FEMA has done 2,075.24 kilometers.
The first is that
Then the Minister of Health issues a travel advisory for Nigerians following the spread of the deadly coronavirus.
all Nigerians and all persons from Nigeria intending to travel to China should delay their travel plans until further notice. All persons arriving from China or any country that has a major outbreak is advised, if they have no symptoms at all, to self-isolate, meaning that they stay indoors in their homes for at least 2 weeks. And if they develop any symptoms like cough, catarrh, sneezing, breathing difficulties within this period, to report to the nearest health facility.
Though the Minister of Health says he has no statistics of the number of people returning to the country from China after the Lunar New Year celebrations, the conditions of return will apply to anyone despite their nationality coming into Nigeria from China or any country where the coronavirus outbreak is recorded. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Public Affairs Analyst Yinka Oyeniji joins us now to speak on Africa's response to the coronavirus. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good afternoon and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. We cannot reject the risk of the virus being imported to Africa, given the continent's strong links with China. It's interesting that there's been no word from regional bodies concerning action against the virus. Or is it better to allow individual countries to deal with it on a per-case basis?
All right. I must confess to you that other than the health agencies in each nation on the continent and in our region, the media also has a major role to play, which thankfully Channels Television is doing right now. I can say to you for a fact that the Center for Disease Control at the African Union and also at the level of ECOWAS is doing a lot with respect to ensuring that Africa does not suffer majorly from this disease. And in that respect, there's ongoing efforts with the Bill and Melinda Gates organization, which has thankfully released the sum of $5 million to Africa to combat this scourge. And Liberia is also presently working on appropriating a budgetary fund with respect to controlling this. The Director General of the African Union Center for Disease Control, Professor John, has also released different statements within the last 2-3 days, talking on the level of preparedness of Africa, working in conjunction with World Health Organization, and also advising different nations to come up with their own national strategies so that we can all combat this epidemic.
Yeah, and for now, Africa is the only continent without a confirmed case. Although there are suspected cases in Ethiopia and Kenya, thankfully, Cote d'Ivoire has been cleared. How would you rate the continent's preparedness for possible infections? Or do you think it will be fear-mongering to keep pressing for actions from the government?
That's what I would say. First of all, we've suffered in recent times from the Ebola epidemic, and the infrastructure put in place at that time and the measures are still available right now to be able to deal with this outbreak of epidemic. However, everybody is talking about prevention with respect to issuing travel advisory concerns and all of that. That is not enough. I'll say to you that we are preparing to say that we are at the level of prevention, but we are not saying anything about developing vaccines. It's going to take 2 months to develop vaccines to combat this problem. And countries like United States are at the forefront of developing these vaccines. I do not hear anything from Africa to say that we are working on research to ensure that we can develop vaccines here. Even after vaccines have been developed in the United States, it may take a while before they are shipped down to Africa because they may be limited in quantity when they are produced. So other than saying that we want to restrict movement, we want to restrain movement, we should also be talking about, we should look to our universities and our centers for research to develop vaccines to test, because that may even be a major income earner down the line, all right? Every part of the world is fighting terrorism at this time. This is the time to use this auspicious moment, which we did not ask for, to prepare for any eventualities. So far, so good. We've been issuing advisory, traffic advisory, or travel advisory concerns, but you cannot be sure that somebody who visited China and then from then on went on to United Kingdom or India before coming to Nigeria will not bring it in. So if you are looking at traffic only between Nigeria and China, as well as some countries, few countries that have recorded cases. How about those people who are transiting, who are going like on a roll? China, Africa has two major businesses going on there, and that's tourism and education. Now, these two are not straight between China and Nigeria alone. Some people go visit different countries in one fell swoop like that. Other than that, it takes 14 days to be able to test that this virus is indeed living in anybody. So we can't just limit our efforts on controlling it when it comes. We should also be researching how we will be able to develop vaccines and equip our facilities to ensure that whenever it happens, we are ready.
Just before I let you go, Lagos State is also asking, to the Chinese government to restrict its nationals from coming to Nigeria. How possible do you think it is to, achieve this?
So I tell you the truth, and thanks for asking that question. It's not possible. It's just not possible. There's a difference between advising people and enforcement, all right? Until we say that we are not operating flights between Lagos and China. I mean, you can't stop the trader in the eastern part of Nigeria from doing business. But we have to say that this is an emergency. China and all the journeys in between them cannot be allowed for now. You don't advise people not to go. You say that people cannot go at this time. So we want to look at the facilities on ground. Our borders are shut, but it doesn't mean that illegal entry into Nigeria is not continuing. We have several land borders that are not patrolled at all in any manner. They may not be able to move goods and services, but would human beings not be able to move through those borders? We have porous borders, and there's no doubt about that. We still fight corruption. I don't want to talk about that today. We are yet to use basic technology to be able to police our borders. So Lagos State government by itself alone cannot say we have agreed with the Chinese embassy to quarantine people. How about people who went from China to the United States before coming into Nigeria?
A lot to really speak about, but we don't have much time. But thank you so much for speaking to us. We do appreciate. Well, still to come on the program. South Africa police teams up with Facebook to find missing children. We'll bring you details after the break. Please stay with us.